Hello, and welcome to the Voices of Bellevue School District podcast, where we amplify the voices of students, staff, and families, sharing their unique lived experiences to strengthen our Bellevue community. In each episode, we'll explore We Belong, significant cultural traditions, customs, and lived experiences of our beloved Bellevue community. We learn academic programs and innovative initiatives, along with the staff and students behind them. We lead discussions with leaders in our community on topics that drive innovation in education.
This is Dr. William Jackson, and in this episode of the Voices of Bellevue podcast, Janine and I sit down with educators from Tillicum Middle School who are leading problem-based learning in the middle school level. In this episode, we're joined by Alicia Kallay, who's the Instructional Technologist Curriculum Leader, Tara Weaver, who's the Social Studies teacher, Jordyn Romero, who is the CTE teacher, and Tracey Williams, who's the Science teacher. These four educators have led the problem-based learning experience for students, and they're here to share strategies and how the engagement will be proposed for students in this experience. So enjoy the discussion about the legislative process, sound transit, and the Beavers.
Well, this is exciting. Last time we talked, William, we talked about problem-based learning, and we got into some real good conversation around it. You want to recap a little bit of what we talked about then?
Absolutely. We had a really good conversation around Creators of Our New World initiative, and along with problem-based learning that was being launched in Bellevue School District through Reimagining Middle Schools. And if you caught a piece of the podcast, we did speak about the work that was being done at Tillicum Middle School focused on problem-based learning, and really an investigation of the beavers and the wildlife in the region. And the students are engaged in that project and problem. So we're excited to get involved in that today.
I don't think we need to recap what problem-based learning means, but if someone wants to take the lead on just telling the listener just what it means in like a nutshell.
Sure. So problem-based learning is a way of teaching that involves students really being the leaders of the classroom. It's all centered around an authentic problem, something that's really relevant to kids in their lives. And it has kids asking questions and really driving the learning and learning content as they need to. It always ends with an authentic assessment and with experts in the field. And it's kind of messy and a little chaotic, but it's the most exciting way to learn, I think.
So what is the problem here?
Do you want me to start with how we discovered the problem?
Absolutely.
All right. So a few of us here from Tillicum joined an organization called Sustainability Ambassadors. They're a nonprofit here in Bellevue that works closely with the Bellevue School District as well as other school districts in the area. I think Lake Washington is involved in Issaquah. I think Renton might be involved. I'm not sure, but several here in the area. And what they do is they work with the school districts as well as organizations to help with sustainability issues and really getting kids involved in sustainability and really looking forward to the future. So Jordyn and I joined a couple of other teachers here from Tillicum on a full day PD riding the rails, the light rail system here in Bellevue, and learning all about the rail system. And we were down in the Spring District here in Bellevue where they have their maintenance building. Sound Transit has their maintenance building. And there is a marsh there. And we got to looking at the marsh and started asking some questions about the wildlife in the area and what's happening. And they said that they have to deal with the beavers a lot there in the marsh, because they keep damming up the water, causing flooding. And it's something that they have to think about a lot, is dealing with wildlife when they're putting in not only their transit stations, but also the tracks themselves. So we kept kind of pushing at them to get an answer about how are they handling the beavers? What's happening here with the beavers? And we didn't really get a straight answer. Mm-hmm. So what happened in my brain is I thought about a bill that was introduced in the legislature last year. It's Senate Bill 5846. And it was a bill that would have created not only education for people and outreach, but it would help people manage beaver on their property and organizations help manage the beaver on their property. Unfortunately, the bill died in the Senate.
Wow.
So I thought of this bill and was like, oh, is Sound Transit involved? And it doesn't look like they were. They might have been in talks with the bill. I haven't been able to get any answers from people. So it's something I want my kids to kind of investigate. But that said, that's how the problem came to us, is how do we continue to advance as a society? And how do we advance with our infrastructure while continuing to preserve and sustain the ecosystem in our region?
Great problem to solve or to try to tackle. Jordyn, what would you say about that when you talk to your students about it? How were they intrigued? Did they want to learn more? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, we actually introduced this problem to our students this past week, and they got super excited, A, about thinking of a field trip, but B, thinking about beavers and actually where they're living. Currently, Phantom Lake is also dealing with this beaver issue. So it's something that they're already dealing with and they already know of. And it's also bringing in that infrastructure of the light rail, along with the technology and advancements that they're already using in my class. They're already using 3D printers and lasers, so they're jumping in fully to this problem with the technology to back them up in a solution, hopefully by the end.
Tracey, how did you talk to your students about this, and what then did they say in response to your talking to them about it?
Well, to first kind of say, we haven't talked about it in science class yet. They first introduced it in the CTE class. When we come back from break, though, we'll be bringing in from Sound Transit.
She's actually works for the city of Bellevue in the utilities department.
So as wildlife biologist going to be coming and talking to us about kind of beaver ecology, how the city of Bellevue is dealing with different infrastructure issues with beaver. And then we'll be doing some pre-teaching before she comes that day before or the 2 days before in terms of like questions and coming up with questions that the students have, because we're going to bring in all the 8th grade science classes together to then have this presentation. I think 2 different forums, so that's like there's 2 or 3 classes at a time getting the presentation. So we'll have some pre-teaching before so that they're ready to ask the questions, because all these kids have Miss Weaver. A lot of them have Miss Weaver, and then a lot of them are going to be in Jordyn's classroom doing the CTE work. So that's where we are when we come back from break.
That's exciting. So what we're hearing and what we're seeing is what we call cross-curricular work and cross-curricular problems that are being addressed in classrooms. So Alicia, could you step back and maybe describe how students are assessed? How do they receive grades? How do they earn grades in these type of learning environments?
Yeah, so this is going to be kind of a new thing for Tillicum. Project-based learning is kind of just starting out here, but they're doing kind of every class is going to be a piece of the puzzle, and it involves a different type of learning and a different type of skill. So in science class, we're really presenting the problem and they're just kind of chewing on it. So it's like an inquiry. And I don't know that we're not going to be assessing them for a grade. We'll be, assessing the quality of their inquiry, but that's really the start of it. And then it's going to shift over to Jordyn, who is the final project for the whole course. And so it kind of brings in together everything that they've been learning. And they'll be working with engineers, and we have experts coming in who are actually going to give them feedback on their final presentations. So they're going to get authentic feedback from real people. And because these stations and tracks are still being laid, we've been told that they might even have a say, or they might be able to actually influence some decisions that get made for some of these new rail stations. And then I'll pop it over to you, Tara, because your kids, again, have a huge, huge undertaking in your class. You want to talk about it?
Yeah. So I am so excited about this next piece. So my background is in government affairs. I worked for close to 15 years in the Washington legislature and in the Texas legislature doing policy work. I worked in nonpartisan work, so it was helping to support the change making. But now I get to come at it from actual change making perspective. But I have managed to use my connections at the legislature and with TVW to sign my kids up for Capital Classroom, which is TVW's program. TVW is the station that airs all of the legislative stuff, all of the hearings, all of the floor action. They show the Supreme Court here in Washington, everything that goes on down in Olympia is TVW. So they have this program where they have volunteer lobbyists work with classrooms to help kids actually advocate or oppose legislation. So my kids have their own lobbyist who is going to go down to Olympia and advocate on their behalf on the bills that they are into. So we are tracking legislation, hoping that Fish and Wildlife will drop another beaver bill this year. If they don't, though, we will be learning about the system by tracking salmon bills, orca bills, other bills that have to do with this same, stream of thinking. And so the kids are actually going to be able to drive change and hopefully advocate for a bill that passes this year. So that's the goal. And they're actually going to have the opportunity to testify in front of the legislature as well, which is huge, y'all. I didn't get to testify in front of the legislature until I was in my 30s. So yeah, it's very, very, very big deal. I pulled some strings to make that happen.
That's amazing. And I'll ask another question as it relates to what has just been described. Students have an opportunity to engage in the government affairs. They also take government class, and they could open a textbook potentially and learn about the process that you just described. But some have a really hard time engaging in that learning in the classroom or outside of the classroom. And what I hear you're doing is situating the learning within the actual work. So then they're moving and learning and engaging in the process of government.
Oh, yeah. We are putting the kids right into the legislative process without leaving the classroom. I would like to take them down to Olympia, but because we do have the technology to allow them to testify from their classroom, which is so cool. They get to actually voice their opinion to lawmakers and make change before they can even vote.
That is amazing. Jordyn, tell us a little bit about how this will impact your students in your class.
Yeah, so this project is happening in our design and production class, where they have been, with this first part of the semester, learning all of the laser tools and our 3D printing tools and 3D modeling. And they are going to take this as their kind of problem. So where in the Sound Transit, they're currently at a lot of different spots and a lot of different decision-making times for the new light rail station. So our students are going to take that area and are going to phrase it as, what can they put there? What would they put there as something that they already see or something different from what's already being planned out? That's why when we come back from break, we are planning a field trip for them to actually take King County buses and the light rail stations to visit those stations to see what's out there. I mean, so much of Sound Transit works with local artists and having their art in the buildings, and where does that belong in our area that we're trying to plan out? What about the lighting? What about seating? So many decisions are being made that kids really don't think about at this point. So this is putting them into that scenario and having to think about those. By the end, we're going to bring in engineers and people from Sound Transit to really hear what they have to say and hear how they would plan out an area, and hopefully give feedback on some of those decisions and how they're actually made in the rail system.
I'm dating myself. This is so different from the way I learned. Like, this is really like taking what's in the textbook and just flipping it on its bottom and just really applying it. And so all the through lines from design to legislation to the science behind it. Tracey, talk a little bit about your thread.
Well, like I said, I'm really giving the students the opportunity to just kind of dive into figuring out and understanding the ecology and the biology of the beaver and kind of where they play and what role they have as that kind of keystone species in our environment, especially Bellevue. It's such a green belt, such a wetland rich area. So how can they understand the science and then also be able to speak with somebody from the city of Bellevue so that they can ask those kind of underlying questions they have about the ecology and maybe what Bellevue is currently doing now or where they see it going in the future in terms of how they manage and have that symbiotic relationship with the Beaver and Sound Transit and the city of Bellevue. And then that will allow them to have a little bit more background to then feed off of in their social studies class with the legislative work, and then how are they making the decisions in their design and production class.
Hey, BSD community. We'll be right back after this short break.
Hi, BSD families. This is Barry from the district's communications team, coming with an important message for all of us about BSD's budget challenges. Like other school districts in our area, BSD is advocating for ample and equitable funding from Washington State. Our school district will need to reduce spending by approximately $16 million for the 2025-26 school year, on top of the $10 million that we are already working to cut from this year's spending and cuts made during the 2024-25 year. In the upcoming weeks, you will have several opportunities to share your questions, thoughts, and input on how we can reduce spending, generate revenue, or prioritize trade-offs. Here's how you can contribute. Attend a community listening session. There's one on January 21st from 4 o'clock to 5:30 p.m. at Odell or 4 o'clock to 5 p.m. online. A Teams link will be shared soon. There's another one on January 22nd, 5 o'clock to 6:30 p.m. at Whisk in the Rainier Room. You can also email your suggestions to communityinput@bsd405.org or respond to the survey we'll be sending soon. In case you missed it, listen to our podcast episode on our district's finances. Also, make sure to tune into our school board meetings to hear how our school board directors, labor partners, PTSA, and community are working together to secure a brighter future for public education. Together, we can ensure every student thrives. Subscribe now to stay informed and engaged. Let's advocate, let's inspire, let's lead. We're counting on you.
So this doesn't happen in isolation. What kind of planning does it take for the four of you and others that aren't at this table to make this connectivity in learning for students?
Well, I'll take that really quick. I think it's tricky because of just how the schedule is built at the admin level, classes being offered by other kids. And I think part of the reason this has the ability to work is because we all four have common planning. I mean, I don't know if it would work if there wasn't the common planning time. All three have fourth period off where we can plan, grade, do what we need to do. And if that wasn't there, I don't think that this work would be able to happen. Just with everything else we have to do, and staying after is just not really reasonable when, I have kiddos, Alicia has kiddos, just all the things. So that commonality of time is really key because that frees up that ability to have that planning.
And it's taken time to get to this point. So it started off with Tara coming back from the weekend workshop, and she's like, I gotta tell you about the Beavers.
I couldn't get the Beavers out of my brain.
And it's it just hopped over, and more people just kept coming, and it's kind of taken over. The kids are all starting to say why is everyone talking about Beavers?
They all think
that we're stickers. One of our teachers made these funny posters about a beaver club. It's become kind of a Tillicum inside joke, right? Which is
it really has. And the kids are starting to catch on to the inside joke to the point where today a couple of them came into my classroom and said, Ms. Weaver, are you so obsessed with beavers because they're the only animal that rhymes with your name? And I just couldn't stop laughing about it. They know that we're talking about all of this stuff, and now they've started it in Ms. Romero in Jordyn's class. And I've started talking to them a little bit, trying to get them excited about the legislative process. And I think it's just going to all come together.
So this is, oh man, I have so much to laugh about here. But instructionally, I do want to just keep us on that through line as well, because there's so much rich instruction, and this conversation, some of that could get lost just based off of how vibrant this conversation is. But I do know that through problem-based learning and project-based learning, there's opportunities for students to have multiple ways in and multiple ways out and multiple ways of assessment. So potentially, Jordyn, if a student isn't feeling engaged in your learning environment, however, they're hyper engaged in your learning environment, Tracey or Tara, how do you support that type of learner within this type of problem or project?
I mean, so you're going to always have those kids that are more humanities based, so they're going to grab onto the legislative process, or the ones that are more engineer or science based are going to grab onto the design and production and the biology behind the organism. But together, right, we can't have the legislation process without the engineering and the science, and vice versa. So if you have that kiddo that's in design and production that's like, rah, rah, I don't really like this whole thing, it's like, well, you have to be the person that's helping take the plan of your group back to social studies class on why this would be the best station design and why would it be the best way to support that legislation that's going forward about beaver sustainability, or why, you know, the science behind the ecosystem and the wetland viability is being supported and enhanced or discussed with a billboard or some sort of, you know, environmental art in the station so that others know about that passion of yours. So you need all three things for it to be a cohesive event, even, you know, in the city of Bellevue. That's what they're doing now, right? And so showing the kids that.
And this is middle school. So a kid might not even realize that they might think they don't like social studies, but then this project would be like, oh, wait a second. I get to present, I get to debate. That might activate an interest they didn't know they had in science. You know, maybe they're not enjoying learning about magnetism, but being able to talk about what they're seeing and, you know, the lake down the street might turn them on to that sort of thing. So it's all about just like sparking little bits of curiosity for them and getting them to start to realize that learning is all around them. It's not just, they're not passive. It's not just coming to them. The teacher's not just delivering this to them, but they're going out and seeking answers to their own questions.
So I'm thinking about, and I can't wait for us to come back because we'll have students in the next episode to talk more about this and just really hear from them because, you know, we're getting all warm and tingly talking about it. A parent will probably listen to this while you all are engaging the students in instruction. What should parents be saying or doing? What advice would you give parents while students are going through this problem-based learning, particularly this assignment about beavers?
Ask them questions.
Beat me.
Right on.
Please ask them questions. That is, that's one of my goals in my class, is to get my kids to engage their families as well. Like, talk about the issues. And I think that's why things like problem-based learning is so important, because these kids could actually be making change that impacts their families for real. So, I mean, I think that is so important to just ask your kid what they're talking about at school. Ask them about the beavers.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
That's our rule at home. I mean, it's not, do you have homework? It's, what did you learn today? What was interesting? What questions do you have? What can you tell us about your lesson? You know, it's not just like, how was school? Good. No. What did you do first period? What did you do second period? And so then that's just like, how are you taking what's happening in Ms. Weaver's class and connecting it, especially a kiddo that has 8th grade science and 8th grade social studies and is in design and production. How are all three of those connected? So again, going back, just, you have to ask them questions. You can't let them be passive, the parents and the kids.
I think when we record the next episode, we will be in the midst of legislative session. So I'm hoping that the kids will either have a bill that they are working on or have an idea of how they could put something like this forward in the future. Because that's going to be the end product in my class, is, what is your proposal? What would you propose if this isn't the bill? What is? So in January, they'll be in the midst of the legislative session and hopefully have some public hearings that they'll be testifying on.
Jordyn, what about you?
Yeah, my kids will be hopefully either in the middle or right at the end of their design project. this is a semester class, so we kind of have to fit it all in before January 23rd. So we're working on making sure those deadlines get met, but they'll be able to have a full design of what a transportation-oriented development would look like and where a light rail station might want to go.
Well, I would say, not to diminish the biology, but we're probably the smaller part of the puzzle in terms of like what the kids are taking away. I think just what things you could ask them, or hopefully they will take away, is the idea of connecting with somebody that's actively working with the biology that lives in Bellevue, and how does that influence, civil engineering decisions, because they will have come and talked to them already, and kind of just seeing how it's not just learn about this organism, but how do we learn about this organism so that we can live in harmony with it and advance in our civil engineering in the city to better have green sustainability and transportation and all of that.
I think more than any other subject, science does problem-based learning a lot.
Already in the units.
It's already like part of, and they make it relevant to kids. You talk about what's happening in the world, like the local environment of kids. And so it might be kind of fun to talk to your kids about how like what's happening right now feels different, or how they would compare it to the way that they're traditionally taught in other subjects outside science.
Great question.
Because we notice our kids like excel in science way more than other subjects. And so the question is like, why is that happening? Is it just inherently more engaging? I think it's more.
Yeah, and I know in social studies, I have noticed a huge difference when I approach a unit knowing that we're going to end with some kind of problem-based learning as the big assessment at the end. The engagement it just goes through the roof compared to your traditional lecture, read, answer questions. Obviously we have to do some of that in a history class, but we try to avoid it now.
Any predictions for the next episode? We'll have students around the table. Any predictions on what they'll say, what they'll think, what they'll do? Is it unpredictable to try to predict students?
I don't think we should. That's the beauty of PBL is you don't know what's going to happen, and you have to like lean into the unknown.
And they are 14.
Yeah, exactly. For 13, 14-year-olds, we never know what's going to come out of their mouth.
Or if you're open to like any possibilities, right? They might like be like, Beavers, I'm not interested in them. I'm interested in salmon instead. And we'll have to go there.
It's cool.
Yeah.
We'll have to
follow
maybe
them.
salmon will be the focus. We don't know.
Yeah.
Incredible. It's been a delight to talk, and I can't wait for the next episode so that we can just unpack all of this.
Thank you for tuning in and for hearing from our Tillicum team. Excited to bring students back and to hear from all of you next month. Thank you.
Thank you, Bellevue.